Hi, I'm Alex. I'm your tutor for this section on cash flows. And we're going to talk about discounted cash flows. So what is a discounted cash flow? Well, let's unpack that. Cash flow is when you receive a payment. So for example, if you go into a store and you pay with cash, that store can use that money immediately. So the cash flow is at that time period. If, however, you paid with credit, say 30 days credit, the store would not have the cash for 30 days. So its cash flow would be that money you paid, but in 1 month's time. Now, what is discounting? Well, just as it sounds like, when you have a sale, you discount the value, you are reducing the nominal value of the amount by some factor to account for the fact, as we'll see, that there's value in holding money for a long period of time. So discounted cash flow is the periods when you receive money and discounting by a factor and reducing their value by a factor depending on when you receive the cash flows. So why do we discount cash flows? Well, that's because money has value if it's invested. So if I gave you $10 today and said, would you prefer to have that, or would you prefer to have $10 in a year's time? What you should do is say, I want the $10 today. Now, why would that be? It's because if you took the $10 today and put it into an investment at the bank in a savings account, you would have more than $10 in a year. So you would have more than the $10 that I was prepared to offer you in a year. So you would take the $10 today. It's about the time value of money, which is a different section. But essentially, that is the underlying concept. That the longer you have to wait for your cash, the more you could have done something alternatively with the money had you had it immediately, and therefore its value to you is less than its value is today. So how do we discount those cash flows? Well, very simply, what we do is we know when we're going to get the payments, what time period that we're going to get them, and so we can reduce them by some factor depending on the possible investment rate for that money had you put that into some other form of investment or operation, say, to generate profits. So let's do a calculation that explains how to do this all. It's very simple, and we'll work through the calculation now. So we're going to have a series of cash flows, and one cash flow is going to be immediately given as year zero, which means essentially that you're going to get it immediately, and that we're going to get you $100. And then for simplicity, we're going to offer you the $100 for the next 3 years at the end of each year, at the end of the first year, the end of the second year, and the end of the third year. Now, the total amount of that money is $400, but when we've discounted it, it's going to be less. Now, how much are we going to discount it by? Well, in this case, we're going to take the discount rate R as 10% a year. In other words, had you taken $100, you could invest it, and then at the end of a year, you could have $110. We can't use the 10% directly for the calculation, so we have to divide it and make it into a decimal, and that is 0.1 or 1/10, which is the 10%. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to discount each cash flow. In this case, 100 is always going to be on the numerator, and we're going to divide it by a value of 1 plus the discount rate, which in this case is 10% or 0.1, to the power of the period you have to wait. So in the case of the first year, you're going to have to wait 1 year. So the value would be 1.1, which would be 10% more. So you're going to reduce it, the 100, by roughly 10%. Now, if you wait 2 years, then not only are you going to get 10% in the first year, that money, your $100 plus the interest, is then going to be invested again at 10%, and so you're going to get even more money at the end of the second year, and so on for the third year. So this is what it now looks like. You're going to do, the factor is always going to be 1.1, which is 1 plus the discount rate, to the power of the year. And those values are going to be like this. Immediately, everything to the power 0 is 1, so we don't change that value, it's going to be 100. After the first year, we're going to reduce it by 1.1, the second year by 1.21, the third year we're going to divide by 1.331. So those values now become, immediately, the $100 isn't discounted because you've got it immediately, so that's still worth $100. But the $100 at the end of the first year is only going to be worth $90.01 to you. In the second year, it's only going to be worth $82.64. And in the third year, it's only going to be worth $75.13. And so you can see that when we add these up, we get $347.78, which is the discounted value of the cash flows for those 4 years, which is less than the $400 that we call by the sum of the nominal cash flows. So there we have it, discounted cash flow, very simple calculation, and it leads very naturally on to doing a section on net present value.